Hello and welcome. This is Enlightened Connections, a space where unseen threads are illuminated between people and spirit, between animals and their humans, and between the everyday and the extraordinary. I'm your host, Lisa Aston Michael, medium, healer, and animal communicator. And I invite you each week to join me as I share conversations and practices that bring light, healing, and connection into your world. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today I am delighted to welcome Sarah Yeoman to the show. Sarah is a highly experienced holistic counsellor with more than 2 decades in the health and wellbeing field, bringing together an impressive blend of science, therapeutic wisdom, and intuitive healing. Her background spans exercise science, massage, myotherapy, nutrition, and energy work. She holds a bachelor's degree in human movement, a master's in human nutrition, and multiple qualifications in massage therapy from certificate level through to advanced diploma. She's also trained in holistic counselling, Reiki levels 1 and 2, pranic healing, and holds a master level in Sekhem Seishim. I hope I pronounced that correctly. That's a tongue twister. And drawing from this rich and diverse toolkit, Sarah has created her own healing modality, Cevelo, Calm, a unique approach that blends talk therapy with healing energy to release emotional triggers in a gentle way and to help people step into a clearer, more empowered version of themselves. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. What an impressive introduction.
I know. Who is this woman? I'm reading this and I'm going, oh my, wow, look at this. Oh my gosh. I'm in the presence of greatness. So for our listeners, sneak peek, Sarah and I have actually had a wee chat before, and what she has to speak on today is incredibly interesting and beautiful. And this podcast is all about healing, and Sarah just nails it. We talked about, and we're going to talk about this today, authenticity and trauma responses and the links there, because with Sarah's plethora of skills and her background, it kind of all comes together in a program that, well, we'll talk about Uniquely You, which is the one-on-one sessions that Sarah offers, and then we'll talk about the Authenticity Circle. So there's so much to speak about, and we might even, if I'm allowed, touch slightly on human design and astrology. Sarah and I had an awesome chat about that before, and how recognizing ourselves in those charts can help us so much. So, Sarah, what I have to ask you, what first drew you to such a powerful healing path?
It's an interesting question, and it could be long-winded if I chose to do that, and if you're open to that. So originally I trained to be a primary school teacher, and that clearly isn't where I am today. And from there, it was interesting. I was doing emergency teaching, thinking I should apply for teaching jobs. I think I got to 10 before I kind of went, maybe this isn't what I should be doing. I managed to only get 1 interview out of that, and I was one of the last 2, and I still didn't get it. So again, I kind of went, it was probably the first time in my life that I actually said, okay, if I'm not meant to do this, what am I meant to do? And interestingly enough, the words massage dropped in. I'd done the human movement, as that was a double degree with my teaching education. And so I wanted to be a primary PE teacher, so that health was always in the background. And so massage dropped in, and I'm like, oh, where did this kind of come from? And it was very interesting. I started looking up massage schools in, local to me and all of that kind of stuff. I went to a couple, and part of my search ended up with a massage school literally within walking distance of home.
Oh, that's nuts.
You couldn't even plan that, right? You couldn't even plan that. So, and they did a express version, so I could do a 12-month qualification in 3.5 months. there was good and bad around that. There was an assessment task every 10 days. So by the end of the 3 months, you were like, oh my God.
You needed trauma therapy yourself.
a bit like that. But it was interesting because I can remember sitting in some of those classes going, I don't remember any of this from my exercise science degree. And then I kept my notes from that course and I went and had a look, and almost word for word, the anatomy and physiology was exactly the same. And I'm like, obviously I just didn't feel I had integrated that very well. But by the time I'd finished that first course in, interestingly enough, relaxation massage, I was like, I feel like there's more that I need to know. So they offered the diploma after that, which I moved straight into. That was 12-month course and dove deeper into the healing powers of massage, I guess. I originally signed up thinking relaxation massage was all it was going to take, all I was going to need. And then the further you got into it, the more you realize that just wasn't enough. And it probably wasn't enough for me to feel like I was remedying anything. And that's where the idea of the remedial massage took place, and flowed into that really well, did really well with all the subjects and everything like that. So comments abound that I was good at what I was doing, that people enjoyed my massages. I started massaging my mum. She'd been to the chiropractor, for most of her life for headaches and all of that kind of stuff. Within a short period of time, managed to get her off taking Panadols daily and needing to see the chiropractor and stuff like that. So those kind of things just kept affirming to me that I was on the right path. So that's where that all started, was a failed teaching teaching career into the healing arts.
But isn't it interesting how the universe seems, we call it the universe or fate or guides or whatever, whoever's doing this stuff, right? It could be us, could be our higher selves, right? Isn't it incredible how you just keep knocking on these doors and it's like, what is going on? What is happening? But then you finally get whacked over the head with a cricket bat and it dawns on you, oh, maybe I should be doing that. And then when you're on your right path, these doors just fly open. They just fly open and everything is it just goes incredibly smooth for you. So the leap now to this incredible trauma responses and authenticity link, what is that about?
Well, that's almost the 2 decades of life experience, all of those kind of things. So fast forward, segmenting how this all kind of came about. So I completed my diploma. That was 18 months. I then started working in the industry. I did 5 years massage work through various day spas, women's gyms, private clinic, and all of those kind of things. And so I like educating myself. I'm kind of a lifelong learner. And so I just kept accruing courses and things like that. And then I did my master's degree, was 2014 to 2016, graduated 2017. And then we all know what happens in 2020, right? I don't need to go there.
The sky fell.
Yeah. And part of that was my work shut down. I couldn't actually work. Government controls had my industry shut down. So all of that, I went through the first big lockdowns. My mental health was not great at the end of that. To be honest, it was pretty terrible. 13 weeks of wondering, when am I going to be able to work again? Am I going to be able to work again? And feeling like a lack of control in all of that. And then my father passed away in May of 2021. And that was another pivot point. All of the stuff that goes around restrictions and all of those kind of things and I made a promise to myself at the end of 2020. I said, I am not repeating 2020. I'm not going back through that. I was out on a walk with my husband talking about he was saying how terrible the massage industry was because of how unregulated it is and all of those kind of things. And I said, I'm kind of interested in doing this counselling course. And he goes, I reckon that'd be a good idea. I think, people like talking to you, or they open up to you, all of those kind of things. So I enrolled in that. And again, 2021, we had another long lockdown, which gave me plenty of time to invest in that study. And out of that, I had an online space that was very welcoming of me experimenting, and that's where Cevelo Calm was born. It was actually in an empath entrepreneur group that I could experiment with these. And these were worldwide people. These were people I wasn't seeing in person. They were America, Europe, all of that kind of stuff, and tapping into that process of, so I had one that was a food intolerance kind of thing, and I, diving into the stories that went with that, all of those kind of things, and then doing the healing session afterwards, getting feedback later that was saying, I no longer want those foods. And now that I know that story that goes with that food, it's taken away any energy around it and all of that kind of stuff. So that was kind of the start of recognizing how our stories define us.
Mm.
And that's where I have a method called the RISE method that I can take people through, which is basically redefining their triggers, like redefining the stories, finding the wisdom in their stories so that they don't just see them as a negative. They birth us in ways from that standpoint.
Mm.
Fast forward another couple of, and 2024, I tried to run my first online webinar, because I do most of my work in person, prefacing that. And that was my tower moment. It didn't go to plan. It was not, and from that, it was not enjoyable. And it was like, I'm trying to do it other people's ways. I'm trying to do it in a way that didn't resonate with me, didn't feel aligned, all of those kind of things. Come to the start of 2025. Again, that kind of self-reflection was, I didn't want to do 2025 like I did 2024. And I said, I really want to get to know me this year. I really want to get to know me this year. That's where human design and astrology came in. And that's also where unmasking myself over this year to find a way to show up in a way that feels aligned, feels easy, all of that kind of stuff. So that another long story as to how I got to creating the Authenticity Circle recently, which is just a space where using those two lenses for self-discovery, to finding out who you are, how you show up in the world, how best to show up in the world, that feels good to you.
I wanted to ask a little while back, Cevelo, does that have meaning, that word, or is it?
So Cevelo is mind. I didn't want to use the word neuro. I didn't want to, because there's supplements out called neurocalm and all of that kind of stuff. So I was trying to find another word. I believe it's an Italian background, and I may be crucifying the language, but because I'm not Italian, but I just really like the resonance of it. I like the way that it went together, and as I said, it was encapsulating of what it was, calming the mind from that side of things. So yeah.
So if you do a session with someone, Uniquely You is the name of the session that you do, what type of situation would a person come to you? Would it be like, I'm feeling depressed, or my dog passed away, or life's just not going great? Who would come to you?
A variety of people is probably the easiest way to say that, but typically someone who's feeling stuck, someone who feels like they've tried all the things, they're not getting the answers or seeing the results they want. So it could be from diet, so they're trying to lose weight, that's not happening, what's going on? There could be a career path that doesn't seem to be panning out, what's going, so I explore the layers underneath it. It's not superficial work. It's actually deep core work. My sessions tend to be highly intuitive. It's hard to explain, but there is a rhythm to it that flows. And as I said, it's intuitively based. It's not predictive. I don't have a set of questions that I go, okay, we start at question 1 and we end up at question 10. It can flow off. And a lot of it is quite surprising. Usually childhood trauma will come up in those sessions somewhere along the lines. A mother said this, a father's done that, a teacher's done this, all of those kind of things that we've almost forgotten or repressed. And that was part of my healing process with the RISE method, was recognizing where those stories were coming from was pivotal in my healing process to no longer be triggered by them. As long as I stood in the messiness of hubby would say something and I'd get upset by it, and I didn't want to continue that cycle. I can clearly remember we were sitting in the car. He was talking about wanting to play golf X time, but, nearly weekly. And I'm like, what do you mean? I took that as like, there was a bit of an abandonment issue that came up, but it was interesting. In that moment, I went, okay, there's something going on here that's not his, that's not
Yes.
his, that is mine. That is mine to own, dive into, and, as I said, fundamentally work out where was that story coming from. And that was a father issue of mine. That was a father issue of mine. And now I don't even have to think about it. My husband plays golf every Sunday. He's free to do that. I'm happy for him to do that. I love that he's got something that he gets to do. As I said, if you'd asked me, a decade ago, that my response was like, oh my God, he's abandoning me. Why doesn't he want to spend time with me? Why doesn't he want to do these things with me? He wants to go and play golf instead. So as I said, I've cleared all those underlying stories. At the crux of my Uniquely You work is getting to those stories, like getting to those aha pivotal moments where you kind of go, finally see the connection. I can see why this hasn't worked out. I can see why that hasn't worked out. It could be money. It could be, as I said, money, weight, any of those kind of stories that just keep us looping and keep us circling are the perfect people to come and see me.
Do you find that people get stuck in archetypes? Do you see?
Interesting, because I actually don't do a lot of archetype work.
Are people set in their ways? How come we don't remember the good things that are said to us, the words of encouragement or the compliments we don't remember any of that, but we remember like one bad thing somebody said 15 years ago. Why don't we remember the good stuff? What do you think is within us that we seem to hang on for grim death to the hurt?
I think primarily it's a protective strategy. So we don't need to protect ourselves from the good stuff, right? We literally don't need to create walls or boundaries or any of those kind of things. So the brain will typically filter that out. Like it'll filter it out. It's like, that's safe, that can come, that can flow through you, that can go, right? So on a level, yeah, we will forget them from that standpoint. But those negative comments that we hear, our internal system will just fire up and goes, we need to protect ourselves. So, and hence why sometimes we actually shut down that protective mechanism and we go blank. Like people repress those things to such a great degree if they were so severe that they've blanked them out, like they've literally blocked them out because they don't feel safe to come back to them. And even though they know that they're now a grown adult, they've lived through other life experiences and all of those kind of things, there's a part of them that still doesn't feel safe to dive into those spaces and stories for fear of what's on the other side. And I think it is an interesting concept that I have a brother who has lifelong experiences that he feels like he can't bring to the surface. And again, you can't make people do that. Like I'm not here to make somebody go to a place that they're not comfortable with and all of those kind of things. And that's part of the process, and that's why it's layered. Like some people can go there in the first session, but some people might need more sessions. And I don't stipulate in my programming that you've got to have 10 sessions to get your results or any of those kind of things. That's why I flow with a single session. I don't push people into packages, all of those kind of things. So there has to be a safety. And I think generally speaking, our society doesn't create that safety. People feel too damaged if they've had, let's say, sexual abuse, other forms of abuse that they think that they should have been able to avoid or shouldn't have had to participate in, and all of those kind of things. Our society teaches them that they're the bad one, right? That's how they internalize it and take it on, that they're the bad one, that they're not, that it's their fault. Like that's how that's how trauma gets created. At some point we blame ourselves. Some of my early childhood wounding has me feeling like a burden to my parents and that I was not wanted, and therefore as an expression of that is if I wanted something then I was a burden. So that was my processing that I had to go through. And I think part of my skill has been creating the space where people feel safe to express. They know, on the other side of that, they know that I'm not going to sit there and judge them. They know that they're welcomed in whatever they tell me. And again, I think that's from the massage side of things. When you're touching someone physically, that's such a private contract. I'm going to call it a contract. It's from that standpoint. Somebody has to feel safe enough, A, to even undress, B, to be touched by a stranger at times. Obviously, some of my clients are now 20 years on, so it's not a stranger client anymore. But for those initial sessions and until they become truly comfortable, even their body sits in stress and they can hold for a bit longer than they need to. They struggle to relax. Sometimes it's not until after the session that they kind of go, oh, I can let go now. Learning to provide that space over the last, as I said, 24 years of massage has helped in that counselling space as well.
Does massage help with trauma? Do people come for massage to release trauma, like their body is like steel across the shoulders, that sort of thing? I'm curious.
So it's probably not the original reason that they come, but it's part of the evolution of sessions if they're open to that discussion of talking about the metaphysical associations. Like if they're having lower back pain that isn't resolving, I might bring in that conversation around support or money or family or any of those kind of things for them to kind of see a link between where they're at and what's showing up in their life.
Mm.
So initially, no, but then I broach the subject with some people that this might be an emotional aspect to this. There's so much more open to receiving the touch, the healing touch, because it's a sensory thing. Part of massage is calming the nervous system. It's designed to calm the nervous system, done in a way that's designed to calm a nervous system. Some people, if they push too hard, like I had to go through that evolution as well with understanding the pain response from hard is not always better in a treatment, even though some people will come to me and go, just go as hard as you want. I'm like, sometimes that's not right. Sometimes if all you're doing is bracing, then it's counterintuitive to what we're trying to achieve. So there's that education, how the body works, how it stores stress, and stress is obviously can be a post-trauma response. So yeah, as I said, it's an evolving landscape when people are open to that conversation, but commonly it's preemptive from that standpoint with a conversation around their central nervous system and stress and how they hold on to it and where they might hold on to it and why they might hold on to it. And then that will lead into the mind-body relationship and all of those kind of things.
Yeah, it's a big thing, what you just said about why they want to hold on to it. I actually had a pretty rough and tumble early years of my life. I just finished doing a solo podcast on imposter syndrome because that was my baby. I owned imposter syndrome, I had RTT therapy, and at the end of it I said, look, no, I don't feel any different. It's like, and one of the therapists actually asked me, why don't you want to let go of it? There's nothing wrong with any of these therapies. They're proven, they're successful, they work, but you don't want to let go of it. It's like you're holding on to a baby. You just won't let go. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I have made my trauma my baby. Have you come across that in your practice?
I think it's important because, and it's an interesting designation to recognize the capacity for some people to do that. And again, I think it's highly protective. I literally believe that there's a part of you that is so traumatized by it, will regress you, right? There's an aspect of you that is so protective. And part of my work is taking you back to the child that got hurt and going, how can you love that? How can you love the inner you to feel safe enough? What does she actually need? Like literally asking that question in a session can bring out all sorts of responses to feel safe enough. This is about you feeling safe enough to receive in a way. And again, this has to be about what your willingness. And now it'll be interesting now that you've had someone make that comment, right? What kind of shifts and changes are going to come on the other side? Because that's an awareness that's been brought forward that's kind of been hovering under the ground. And you've made that nice fertile soil where you've gone up nice and protected. And I know that there's that trauma there and I can talk about it to a degree and it's not quite ready to go. And again, like from the massage world, it's when somebody gets labelled with a bulging disc or they get labelled with some musculoskeletal disorder, or it could be rheumatoid arthritis, it could be osteoarthritis, it could be, any number of things along that line. But then they live by that label. And And as you said, there's a little bit of ownership for them. And then the question to that, and commonly, there's a secondary gain. There is a gain out of why we hold on to these things. Sometimes we don't want to give language to them. Again, it's probably a safety issue, probably not quite ready to dive that deep into holding on to that or living your life by that label or living your life by that trauma story or all of those kind of things because it's defined you in a way, right? And
Yes.
the potential is that it's set you on a path and you're like, if I let that go, then what happens to all of this?
And who
Like
am
what
I?
happens? Yeah.
And who am I if I let go? Who am I? And that's actually bigger than the trauma itself,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Because, and again, we as a society like to, as I said, identify, label. And it's like, I think it's part of the problem when some people have, let's say, long-term career path that's all falling to pieces underneath them. And they're like, but who am I if I'm not the teacher? Who am I if I'm not the nurse? Who am I if I'm not? And then that, so similar to the body part issue or the story that you take in with that, who am I without that? Like, and I guess on some level, there's that superficiality that comes with how we're viewed in world. So, like, we're typically, as women, given a woman, a female label, and then that comes with a whole set of connotations, right? We're emotional, we're moody, we're
We like
cyclic,
pink.
we're all of that. Yeah, all of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. We're meant to wear dresses, we're meant to have nice nails, we're meant to get our hair done every week, we're meant, all of those kind of fluffy things. But when you look at some of the archetypes, as we were talking about before, below that, you've got Lilith, you've got Isis, you've got these fiery female entities that are protective by nature and all of those kind of things. But they're not the ones that we talk about. We talk about the Mother Marys. We talk about
The good girls,
Mary
the
Mag.
good wife. The
Yeah,
good wife. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. And those powerful, other types of powerful entities get repressed to a degree because they're told that they're too fiery, too angry, all too, right? All of that
Mm.
kind of stuff. So again, if we looping back to labels and stuff like that, again, men are allowed to be that, women aren't. All of those kind of things are hindering our growth overall. And I'm going to weave this back into our authenticity, is actually stopping us showing up as our true selves. Are all the labels that we're given and all the stories that we're told of how we should be and what we're meant to like. And that's what I found in the online business world. I should be having a funnel and I should be doing these icky marketing strategies to people and I should. And as I said, I got to the end of that and I said, I can't. Like, I literally can't. Like, I've got to find a way to do it my way. Living by labels and living by identity sources and things like that is an interesting conversation for most people to go through, male or female, but primarily women tend to hold on to a lot more identity trauma than men do.
There's an interesting thing happening in the world at the moment, isn't there, as we speak, with women coming forward from all of these trials. I think it started with Harvey Weinstein or whatever, and it's now gone on to the Epstein situation, and that's going to be like watching 10 pin bowls go down one by one over the next few months. It's brought to mind to me just how much. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, not being specific about these particular events. They're examples, but for how long has this been going on that women have not been able to be taken seriously in their roles as warriors? You look at TV shows, Bionic Woman, Xena Warrior Princess, whatever, Wonder Woman, they were all kind of like almost comedically viewed. But you look at Batman and Superman, and they're the heroes. The females were kind of touted as being entertainment, and hard to explain what I'm trying to say. But I think that it's an interesting time that we're in right now with a female energy. Doesn't mean man or woman, but female energy rising as well. Some big waves in the world, making some big waves.
And I agree. And I think part of the resistance is the manner in which it's getting done. And it's a conversation that I often have, is how can we create the least amount of resistance to shifts and changes and all of those kind of things so that people aren't getting defensive. So again, we come back to the foundations of relationships is how do we create equity in relationships without diminishing either party, right?
Mhm.
Because there's that aspect if one's powerful then the other one's diminished and is there even sways in that if the likelihood and how it ideally is expressed, is that that flows. Like that there will be times when, in my case, my husband does a bit more and has this, and then there'll be other times when I take over the lead, and there'll be ideally probably about 80% of the times we hover equally between needs getting met, the capacity to ask for what we want, being heard for what we want, and all of those kind of things. And again, foundationally, relationships aren't taught how to do that, regardless of where that is. And as we said, you're seeing that on the bigger, wider world kind of things. We've got leaders who are overly arrogant, who dominate, all of those kind of things. And then we've got a layer, like even here in Australia, if we look at our Labor and Liberal parties kind of thing, that one's poo-hooed for their ideology and the other one's lifted up for their ideology and you're a bad person if you vote for this or you don't agree with this and all of those kind of things. So as I said, it filters from upper levels down to lower levels. And women, as you said, we're just finding our voice, part of this process. And we've had some strong women come forward, like as you said, that Me Too movement and all of those kind of things. But how many times did we hear about those women as being either not saying the truth, over expressing the truth, making up stories, all of those kind of things, because someone didn't want the downfall?
Correct.
So on the flip side of that, we can see that whole liar conversation coming forward. And again, I would question the person who feels like they've got to make up stories for where they're at. Again, I would be that compassionate witness kind of going, okay, what's going under the surface there? What's making you say those kind of things? And then on the flip side, because we have had that, we've now got a whole level of distrust. We've got a whole level of, if someone comes out and says they've been raped, and 90% of the time you want to believe that it's truthful, but how many of us also still doubt that conversation because of the timing of it, who it was, when it was, how long ago it was, all of those kind of things to kind of place distrust on the person who's expressing themselves. And I can see that happens in workplaces, that happens in, as I said, intimate relationships, that happens in family relationships, all of those kind of things. My wish for the world is that we could express ourselves with ease and grace and be received on the same level, if you know what I mean, that there's inherent trust in the capacity we feel to be honest with others, that we don't have to hide behind our stories. And again, from a protective mechanism, that we're all accepted and loved for who we are. That's my big wish for the world. Will I ever see it? I don't know, but I'd sure hope for it.
Well, you actually preempted my question because I always ask the same question. If you could share one message for the world, what would it be? And I think you just shared yours.
Yeah, I would really love for us to actually just openly be ourselves and, as I said, accepted for who we are, that we don't feel like we've got to morph into or put on masks or cover up or, as I said, I think, and again, that's personal experience as much as anything else, that we can't, being told that who you are is not good enough. Most of us have heard that in some way, shape, or form throughout our life. I would love for that to not be the current generation of children's lives. I wish that healing for every person on the world, all of that kind of stuff, that they can sit and own who they are and be proud of them.
Well, if people are going through trauma, and if you're human, you're going through trauma of some kind because no one escapes unscathed. But if you are somebody that is going through a difficult time, or maybe you're stuck within yourself, you're stuck emotionally, or you just need that guidance and assistance, I would highly recommend you get in touch with Sarah. And her website is Sarah Yeoman Wellness. It's Sarah with an H. I'll spell the whole lot actually. SarahYeoman wellness.com. And Sarah is also on Facebook at Sarah Yeoman Integrative Wellness. and on Instagram at Sarah Yeoman Integrative Wellness. And we all need help. We all need help in one form or another. And Sarah's work is truly beautiful. I love that she brings us back to our truth and our authentic selves. So, Sarah, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. I should mention you're one of the most beautiful energies I've ever sat with. Truly, there is something about you that even at the first time I met you, I just felt like I was home. You have that beautiful blessing, that beautiful gift from spirit that welcomes people not only from their mind, but from their spirit. That's a blessing and a gift. And I highly recommend that if you're stuck, if you need someone to talk to that you can trust with your whole heart and soul, that'll get you through, reach out to Sarah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for providing the space to have this conversation. It's not one that we get to freely have. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Sarah Yeoman, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here and tuning into Enlightened Connections. I truly hope today's episode offered you something to reflect on, expand into, or feel more deeply connected to, whether within yourself or with the animals and spirit world around you. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe to the show and share it with someone you feel may benefit from it as well. It's one of the most supportive ways you can help this podcast reach more hearts, more homes, and more animal lovers. And if you'd like to stay connected in between episodes, come join me inside the Enlightened Connections podcast Facebook community. I'd absolutely love to have you there. Until next time, take gentle care, stay connected, and trust the whispers.